we've really over the last several years have had kind of just a run almost of tragic student deaths.
Oh, wow.
The mental health challenge has been an dramatically increasing actually issue as we begin to deal with that differently than we ever had before, recognizing it differently and then addressing it differently, equipping leaders to recognize things and address things, partnering with counselors in a different way than we have before, being much more intentional about how we partner with our schools or how we engage parents, those kind of things.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? And welcome to another episode of our Chasing Elephants podcast. And this is a very special podcast edition because this is our Voices from the Trenches edition. And we're right now in the midst of our SLU 101 Dream experience here in Orlando, Florida. And we have about 400 students who are here. And man, I love our SLU 101 experience because it's a great opportunity for me to connect with a lot of friends. Like right now, Dr. Crow, he's out. He's having a nice meal with our worldview speaker. And so, but man, we're here with, I'm here with some friends, and we want to just have a very honest conversation. Let me set it up before I have them introduce themselves. You know, obviously, as many of you are listening, you're a youth pastor, next gen pastor, lead pastor, or even students yourself. And you know that there's so many things that are going on within this generation, and so many challenges, so many trends, and it's ever evolving. It's always moving, it's changing, it's ever flowing. And some of the trends are nationwide, but then some of the trends are very unique and specific to certain regions. And so I thought it'd be great to have a conversation with some guys that are my friends and doing some incredible ministry. And so I'm gonna have them introduce themselves, and then we're just gonna talk. You know, that's what this is. You know how we do on the podcast. We're just gonna talk. You know, they all have different teams. None of them, I don't think any of you are Georgia Bulldog fans, are you? Yeah, but we're still friends. You know, that's when we know that that the gospel can unite, right? And so I'm gonna have them introduce themselves. Starting with my brother Bryan. Why don't you introduce yourself and let everybody know church, what you're doing, and how long you've been in ministry?
Yeah, my name's Bryan Howell. I am the.
There we go.
Okay, that helps. I'm the high school pastor at Hunter Street Baptist Church in Hoover, Alabama.
Yeah.
I've been there for a little over 9 years, and I've been in ministry for a little over 30 years.
Wow. Now, where were you before Hunters?
I was in Fort Worth, Texas at Travis Avenue Baptist Church.
Nice.
And then church in Atlanta, church in Chattanooga.
Wow.
So
always in the student ministry, youth ministry space?
Yeah, I've been doing student ministry since my sophomore year of college.
Nice. So you're like a vet, you know, like one of the student ministry veterans.
I'm old, yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, well, welcome, and I'm glad you're here. And so we also have my brother Tim. Tim, tell us who you are, where you're from, and what church you represent.
Yeah, my name is Tim Wadsworth from Greenville, South Carolina. Been in student ministry since I graduated from Liberty University at North Hills Church since 2010, so going on 15 years.
Wow. Now, where were you before then?
Liberty.
Oh, you were? So
I did an internship down in Seneca, South Carolina for a little bit at a church.
Seneca?
Right in Oconee County.
Oh.
But then Greenville is actually my home, so I have the unique challenge of doing ministry in the place that I was raised.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about that. That's good. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Awesome. Well, welcome. Jason, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what church you're representing.
Yeah, so my name's Jason Stanland. I am the middle school pastor at Fruitcove Baptist Church in Jacksonville, Florida. Been there for almost 9 years, just a little shy of 9 years. Total ministry is 15 years.
Wow.
And I've done everything from college ministry, middle school ministry, super rural, like in the middle of nowhere, population 263.
What?
Was what the sign said in the town. Yeah.
Well, okay, what town was that? That's
Bonifay,
really cool.
Florida.
Oh.
Yeah. Man, it was great. I loved it. It was my first church. Wonderful people. Pastor Shelley Chandler's been there for 20 plus years. It was a great church to start out with, and so miss them. And so I've been at Fruitcove just almost 9 years now. Yeah.
Okay, so you've kind of, like you said, jumped around different departments and stuff. Like, do you have one? And it's okay. This is, it's digital. It's going to stay on the internet forever. Yeah. But do you have one? Do you have like one group? Like, see how I'm your friend, I'm saying you have one group, one age group, you say, man, I love them. That was my group. See how you.
Okay, so when you've done it long enough, it's not just the specific age group, but watching them in every age and stage. So I now have collegiates, and so for a season I was the interim student pastor at Fruitcove, and I did middle school, high school, and college, all separate. And every Thursday night I would have college students at my house for about a year and a half, and they were my middle schoolers at one point.
Yeah.
And then put them in D groups with myself, and now they are leading discipleship groups and stuff in the middle school with me. Yeah. And so to see full circle, that's fun.
Yeah,
that really is.
That's good. That's great answer, by the way. I love how you're
it's diplomatic, wasn't it? Yeah.
Very much a pro at this. So I love that. Well, guys, here's what I want to do. I just really wanted just to have a conversation, like I said. And the first thing I want to talk about is kind of like current trends and challenges that you guys are seeing. And this might be, you might can answer or want to answer this based on where you are currently, or as I know all of you have traveled different places and you have networks even outside of your cities that you're connecting with other guys that you may see. But what are some challenges, some cultural challenges or trends, some ideologies, mindsets that you're seeing in your student ministry specifically, and also maybe abroad? And so, I don't know, I'll start with, since you're right here, Bryan, you want to start off there?
I don't think this is unique to us, but it plays out kind of differently in our community sometimes recently. But just the mental health challenge has been an dramatically increasing actually, issue as we begin to deal with that differently than we ever had before, recognizing it differently and then addressing it differently, equipping leaders to recognize things and address things, partnering with counselors in a different way than we have before, being much more intentional about how we partner with our schools or how we engage parents, those kind of things. One of the ways that we've seen that kind of borne out in our area is we've really, over the last several years, have had kind of just a run almost of tragic student deaths.
Oh wow! Wow!
It's been it's been inside churches and outside of churches. It's been different schools, different areas of kind of our south side of Birmingham communities. But we've all kind of been connected together in a lot of that, and it's been a challenge.
Wow. Yeah. The mental health crisis, it seemed like, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like it just kind of crept up. It was there, and then it kind of crept up, and then it was like boom. And then I know a lot of people equate COVID, and they say, okay, you really saw it when it came, when we were in the midst of COVID and then coming out of COVID. But it really seems like the mental health crisis has been big, and then it leads to a higher number of suicides, depression, like all kinds of things that are going on. And so with that, Bryan, did you see it? Did you see it during or before COVID, or did it, for you guys, did it kind of show its head a little bit more after COVID, if that makes sense?
It like kind of peeked through the clouds a little bit before COVID, but I think COVID uncovered a lot of things that were really already there and kind of multiplied things that were already there. So we've seen it differently since then. Yeah,
that's good. What about you, Tim? What are some trends and stuff?
So something I think isn't unique to us as well, but something our students are very interested in that as a 90s youth group kid, we were not interested in this stuff, was social justice and politics. And their voice in that. I mean, I don't even think I knew who was running for president when I was in middle school or high school. But these kids are just entrenched in it. We didn't have social media. We didn't have news at our fingertips on our phones. I mean, we had AOL, right? It was like...
And MySpace. Maybe I'm old and MySpace.
And I don't necessarily see it as a problem. I actually see it as a beautiful opportunity. Our kids are hungry to know, okay, this is going on in culture. This is trending on Twitter. As a follower of Jesus, what is my response to that? And so I think that's just something culturally right now we are going through that shapes how we disciple them and their worldview. So when they go to their schools and it comes up at the lunch table, our kids can articulate their response well, but also how does the gospel shape the way they view that?
That's so good. And that's a big one. I mean, I love that you guys are just tracking, but that the social justice and the politics deal, it is huge. And obviously we've talked about it a lot at SLU 201 and everything, just talking about the polarization of our culture and society. Yeah. And now because you see it everywhere, X on IG, TikTok or whatever. I don't know how long TikTok's gonna be here, but
it's gone tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah. So, but you have seen that, and you've seen more division that has been culturally, I think denominationally in some areas, and you're right, like. I don't remember it being as much of an issue where we talked about it in my youth group growing up, or even early on as a youth pastor. Like, it really wasn't that big of a deal. I will say, like, if you guys know, I grew up and did student ministry in an African American church in Atlanta, and there was a lot of conversation and pride and appreciation when President Obama first was elected, and but that was more on the significance and the historical significance of the moment more than anything else. It had nothing to do with policies or anything, but obviously
it was special.
Yeah, it was just special, and so our students and myself, we didn't really have this sense of conversation around any policies, because there were, to be very honest and transparent, there were some policies that President Obama implemented that my pastor, myself, and our church, we just did not agree with, and everything like that. But that was the extent of it. But you're right, Tim. This is now more than ever. Students are having these hard, heavy, deep conversations around politics. They're watching more than just the presidential election. Yes. They're seeing, who's in the Senate, who's in the House, who gets control of what, I mean, they're watching very intently.
Even all the way down to AOC.
Yes.
And the nicknames they have. I mean, who would have thought? I didn't know anyone in Congress or Senate or the ramifications of that. It's unique.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. And my last thing I'll say, and then I'll go to you, Jason. The last thing I'll say on this, we see this in 201 where we'll do like this rapid fire Q&A. You guys have seen that. And I've done it now. I've been privileged to do it now 2 years with Dr. Sean McDowell. And it has, I've been amazed for 2 hours, probably 80% of the questions are around kind of politics. And I know we're in DC, a lot of stuff, we're in the public square, but it's around politics, social justice, the question, who should be my neighbor? How do I determine who's my neighbor? How do I interact with that individual? You know what I mean? Like, it is, and they're very much aware of what's going on. But I will say the danger in this too is that many of these students, their theology comes from what they hear also in the home, more so than them really fully understanding the policies themselves. And so, but that one's a big one. We could do a whole podcast just on that alone. So that's a good one. What about you, Jason?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with both my brothers here, especially the mental health thing. That's been huge, to the point that, like you were saying, training for our leaders, but even training for me. Like, I've gotten and done some certifications, like, this is not my skill set. Having just completed our DISC profile, that as a D, that is not my skill set to listen to people well. But the other two things I'd probably add to that, and they actually kind of both come from the same place, is identity. And we've had this identity crisis going on in youth culture for decades now. But man, it is at such a fever pitch right now where, I mean, it used to be, what kind of person you are, right? How do you feel about yourself? Now we're not even sure if people are people.
Right.
And they're identifying in ways that aren't even human anymore. And it's gone so far out of that. And a lot of that you can trace it back to the identity crisis and Erik Erikson's theories, right?
Yeah.
And so the other thing that he mentioned, and I'm seeing a lot, is the extended adolescence, right? Or prolonged adolescence. I like extended better because I'm a middle school guy, and I say it's gone both ways, not just up. And we want to talk about, like, you know, the crazy kid who's like in his young 20s and back at home, you know, and maybe he went to college, maybe he didn't, maybe he got a great college degree, but he's also back at home, and doesn't want to go out and get married, doesn't want to go out and start his career, and he's just kind of like, whatever, not sure with what to do. Well, the other thing on the flip side of that is students are facing adult topics, adult issues, exposure to things that we didn't even come in contact with until we were in our later teens.
Right.
But I'm seeing it in 10 and 11 years old.
Yeah.
Puberty is hitting earlier than ever before. And
you're so right.
Physical changes, even in brain science now, that are being affected, like their bodies are physically being affected because of this trend in our culture right now.
Yeah.
And so they're dealing with issues earlier with no system, no framework on how to deal with it.
Oh, that's good.
And then it's taken them longer to get to a place where they can. So most of the time, like an issue what I'm dealing with in student ministry is, you know, they get up, they graduate high school, off they go to college, right? And they're not prepared.
Yeah.
Because they're not, like, capability wise, an 18-year-old today, I don't think has the same capability wise, you know, I'm talking like very blank general statements about our culture as an 18-year-old 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
Right.
You know, we're seeing different levels of maturity, same age number, but there's an emotional maturity that's not the same.
Man.
And so there's something that I think for us in this sphere is how do we somehow move that back up for students where they can be prepared at more, I don't want to say a normal age.
No, that's
what does
good.
that even mean?
Yeah.
But at an earlier age.
Yeah. Man, that's so good. And you know, we talked here when Bryan and I were talking about the mental health crisis, and we talked about the COVID and all that stuff. Do you think, Jason, that season, that time of being stuck in the home, during that COVID, did that play a part? Do you think that played a part in it? Did you see kind of like this extended adolescence come out of that?
Yeah, and it's not just me seeing that.
Yeah.
Where, so maybe if you're listening to this right now, you had a kid, and in school hit, all of a sudden we all became homeschoolers, and maybe you thrived. My family did not, but maybe you did. And then
we stuck with homeschooling.
Yeah,
really.
We got a free trial, and we
Yeah.
loved it. And our boys are still homeschooled.
Yeah.
Wow.
So when a lot of kids, they went back to school, they found out that they were so far behind that a lot of school districts and curriculum actually changed their curriculum within the span of a year.
Yep.
And things that they had been doing for a long time, they're like, okay, we can't do this anymore.
Wow.
And so watching a group go completely through high school, having experienced what would have been ninth grade COVID year, and then all the way up, I was still seeing the effects of it come their senior graduation and into their first year of college.
Wow.
And I don't know if they just missed that moment or if the moment just got tweaked, because they still hit those markers.
Yeah.
But it appeared anecdotally
Yep.
later than what I usually experience that with students. And that has
So
continued, not just with that class, that because sometimes you have those critical pivotal years like ninth grade, senior year, every year all the way back.
Yeah.
It's the same now.
Man, this is so good. I love this. So we got the category of mental health challenges, the conversation of social justice and politics, and then the extended adolescence. So perfect. And so we didn't even script that. That's awesome. So let's build on that. So as leaders who are responsible for sermon prep and development, you're articulating and preaching the gospel to students weekly. Leaders and pastors who plan events and trips and programming and all that stuff. How has those particular issues or challenges or trends, how has that impacted your programming, your preaching, or even kind of the way you do events and trips?
For us, we've shifted some of the ways that we do programming. We've always said we want students in groups. Group is the best way to find community with other believers, to have an adult who's involved in your life, those kind of things. We've had to offer those at different times, train leaders for those kinds of things differently. We've shifted them around in lots of different ways. From a sermon standpoint, from a sermon preparation standpoint, one of the things that my pastor says all the time is, it's not original to him, it's supposedly an old A.W. Tozer quote. Your concept of God's the most important thing about you. So whenever I stand up on a Wednesday night or have an opportunity to preach to students, that's one of the things I'm filtering through. I'm trying not to address problems. I'm trying not to just kind of self-help or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, the gospel's the answer to those things, not us. What I want to do is I want to give students, and this is different from, I've been in ministry a long time. The way that I do this now is different from the way that I did this when I first started out, or the way that I experienced it as a student when I was in student ministry. I want to give them some heavy things that they can hang on to, some things that I want them to wrestle. I don't want them to just walk out of there with a list of 4 answers, that I just kind of spoon-fed them and they never have to wrestle with. So, and then we work those things out, much like a lot of other student ministries do. We work those things out in a group after a message, where we kind of dig a little deeper and make it a little bit more personal. We're always bringing it back to Scripture, that kind of stuff.
So good, so good.
Yeah, in the last couple years, where I've really seen success, at least in our body, in our student ministry, is me moving from quarterback to coach. I love doing a program where I get to teach and I do the game and I dictate the life group questions, and that's actually easier than meeting with the junior in high school going, what do you think about the George Floyd situation? This just happened. And discipling them and hearing from them and going, you're teaching the peers next week. When a teenager, when a junior or a senior stands up in front of our kids, they listen in a different way than when they listen to me. Yeah. I'm their shepherd, they'll listen, but it actually takes more work to meet with that kid in the coffee shop, to go to his house, to proofread his notes, to make sure you're not just throwing a kid up there and crossing your fingers, but you're discipling this kid to speak into the situations that is unique to their generation, where I can do it. And they're like, well, you're almost 40, you're a millennial, you still listen to NSYNC. Like, what do you bring to the table here? And, I think I bring a lot. I just think there's a lot of wins from coaching them, let them be the QB, and then letting them kind of pour into them in a way where they have ears to listen, that I think are just so unique. So that's one thing we're trying to do. Like this last Sunday, the goal was not one adult is going to do anything, all the way from the welcome to the announcements to the game to the teaching. And then when we get them to life groups, one of the big things that we try and teach our small group leaders is you do not talk, you ask questions. If you are talking more than them, we are losing and we're not hitting the bullseye. So I think those are the things we are doing programmatically in executing ministry, where it's like, okay, we think that's winning with our students.
Yeah.
So where we used to do, we'll say, more content-driven in high school and more practice-driven in college, we've scaled that back.
Wow.
So now we are very apologetics-based in middle school ministry. Like, I'm going through textual criticism right now with middle school students, and the 8th graders are loving it. The 6th graders are like, what did he just say? And so I have to do it in doses. I preach probably only 20, 25 minutes in the fall, and I have to condition them up to 30, 35 minutes by the spring. Okay. So things like that. But then we want to give opportunity for practice in high school. So something that we do at our church is we have discipleship groups. And so in middle school, it's small groups, mostly led by an adult, but we want an 8th grader to kind of have started helping out with portions of that by finish of 8th grade.
Yeah.
When they move into 9th grade, they go into small D groups, but juniors and seniors are the ones who are leading and teaching.
Yep.
And then instead of having a D group leader who's the adult, we call it a D group coach. And so I actually spend more time with coaches than I do with the students, because I know the coaches are going to spend their time with the students. And we want them to kind of spend like, all right, if D group's going to be on Wednesday, we want you to meet with them maybe on Sunday afternoon or whatever, and just ask, the student, all right, what you teaching on Sunday out of this text, what are you going to talk about? If you start getting into heresy, the adult can, bring you back in a bit, but if you can get a student to start working out their faith to the point it feels so natural, by the time they're a junior, senior, they're going to go to college and they're going to have to find somewhere for that to continue.
Yeah.
Or they'll feel out of place. And that's kind of the theory.
Yeah. Let's lean into that a little bit. That's really, really good, because most people, would say, especially in, traditional, I don't like the term old school, but, when it comes to middle school ministry, that you kind of have to stair step that. You don't really hear many middle school pastors talking about being very intentional about deep diving into apologetics in middle school. They wait to high school to try to do that. So that shift is different. I mean, is that a fair for you guys? Would that be a fair assessment of that's been the, not that it's right, I'm saying, but the traditional thinking is that, man. So how did you, as a person, one of your challenges, your challenge that you were talking about was the extended adolescence and those challenges there. How did you make that shift to a point where you can get the middle schoolers to really have this appetite and also be attentive to talking about things like apologetics, which it can be meaty within itself?
So the research is actually out there that I don't have to do much. So there's a book already gone out there by Ken Ham, Britt Beamer, and the research is that because of this newer age, middle school students are beginning to conclude their worldview by age 13.
Good.
And if you do not answer the questions about their faith and their belief by age 13, they've already moved on past it. And so it's kind of like, when I was a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. Yeah. Now that I'm a man, I left all the childhood things behind me, including Jesus.
Yep.
Because that's just a bunch of Mickey Mouse and fairy tales.
Right.
And whenever we started asking all the questions back then, the youth pastor was like, no, that's too deep to handle now. You're not ready for that. And so they just assumed, oh, he doesn't have an answer. It's probably not real, know.
Right.
And so most of the time, they're already primed and ready to go. I think it's just, for the most part, and I'll just be honest, I had to have the courage to just to try. And to try and answer those questions. And man, it's not been easy every time. Like, they still ask questions all the time that I'm like, we're going to have to come back to that one. I'm going to have to email your parents first to let you know we're going to discuss about this before we get into it.
Yes. Yeah. That's so good. So let me double back around here, Bryan. And so you, I know your church in just a very intentional Bible teaching church, and man, your pastor is one of the best, man, at doing that. For you, as you're talking about the mental health challenges, and I loved your approach of just keeping the main thing, which is the gospel. With the partnerships that you mentioned earlier, because I meant to ask you this earlier, what's the vetting process for you? Because and correct me if I'm wrong. Like, are you partnering with outside counselors or organizations as it relates to if you have a student that's dealing with depression, suicidal thoughts, or whatever, any of those mental illness challenges? Are you partnering with an organization or organizations? And if so, how do you vet them, or is it internal within the church?
I wouldn't describe our partnerships as formal, but we do have partnerships in that we've got some very specific counselors at different counseling organizations that we'll recommend. We've developed that list through both just personal time spent with them. Our associate pastor is pretty phenomenal guy at being able to go and intentionally develop some relationships with some of those different counselors in the area.
Yeah.
We've done that with student ministry.
Yeah.
And there's people that we've brought in. We have a partnership with the Alabama Baptist Children's Home.
Yeah.
That's a really strong partnership with our church. They have a counseling part of their ministry called Pathways, and so we do some things with them and know a lot of their counselors just personal basis, and some of you can go to our church, but we've developed them that way through personal relationships and vetting them out. But it's not a formal kind of, we're just gonna. There's not like a factory conveyor belt where we're just sending everybody to.
I love that. But I think and the reason why I bring that up is because I think sometimes we feel like, we have to reinvent the wheel, or we got to make everything ourselves. And on one end, and so we hurt ourselves and burn out our leaders and, trying to reinvent the wheel. But then the other hand, sometimes we can be too loose with partnerships, and then we have the wrong people coming in to our ministry, and they do more harm than good, there and stuff. And so I knew that, but I wanted to ask that because I love how y'all do that. So Tim, for you, you talked about how you kind of become now the coach, and doing that and having those students where you have the day where, man, it's like, from the welcome to the message, you're doing that. How do you, this is a tricky one. How do you, I know you said you disciple before they get there, but how do you course correct a student? Let me give you an example. You have a student who's preaching a message or sharing a message, and they say something that's off script or not right.
In real time?
In real time.
Okay.
And everybody knows it's wrong. How do you handle that? And here's the reason why. I believe in empowering students. Obviously we're Student Leadership University, we want to empower students. But I also, think have to be very careful because, sometimes students can kind of go off script or whatever. And you don't want to, in my opinion, you don't want to kind of dismiss them or embarrass them or anything like that. But you also, as the shepherd, you got to steward moments.
You're responsible for that.
You are responsible.
Right.
So how do you handle that if that happens?
So this is the way our leadership tier is structured.
Okay.
You have me and the staff at the top. And then we have also coaches, and we call them the mentors of each grade and gender.
Yeah.
So in our student ministry, a life group leader starts in the 7th grade and goes all the way to 12th grade.
Great, okay.
But there is going to be a male and a female coach that stays in that grade, and we call them the expert of all things 7th grade, the expert of all things senior year.
Yeah.
So that when my leaders are moving from grade to grade, you have the pillars that kind of eat, sleep, and breathe that so they can remind, encourage on how to go about that grade. All that to say, my coaches, I have a group chat with them. There are moments when the student ministry is doing their things and teens are leading and maybe it gets a little messy where I text them and it'll say, clean that up. Or let's help explain that a little bit better. So it's not catching my leaders off guard because they understand our philosophy of ministry and our leader meetings and our parent emails. For that to happen, no parent, I think, would be upset or caught off guard by that because they know how we function and really what hitting the bullseye looks like. And they know at times that's going to be a part of discipleship in students. Heck, my senior pastor knows if he gives me a mic and I do announcements, there might be some cleanup. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's how it works, like all the way, even from the top down on staff in a church, right? And so we kind of know how to quote unquote clean it up. But then there's opportunities to follow up with that kid. And sometimes they know they dropped the ball or they articulated it wrong. But how I personally do it, I will send a text and say, hey, that needs attention, or clarify that when we go to life groups. And those leaders are so sharp. On our leadership team, we have 81 life group leaders.
Wow.
So out of the 81 life group leaders, they know the structure, they know how we are to execute those things, and they have the teaching outline before that student teaches. So if they get off, my leaders know the scope and sequence of where that kid should be going. So if he derails, they can bring it back in.
Yeah, so good. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's our time right now. And so, as always, we want you to continue to follow us at SLU Lead. It's at SLU Lead. And then you can follow my brother Brent at Brent A. Crow. And you don't have to follow me. It's okay. I prefer you to follow him. But no, seriously, you can follow me at I am Jeff Wallace. And don't forget, Youth Pastor Summit registration is definitely open right now still. And so we'd love to see you in SoCal, in Dallas, in Nashville, Chicago, North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina, and then also in the fall for our first ever national. So until next time, God bless you. Peace out.